Hi, this is TJ with On Point Archery in Norwalk, Connecticut. Today I want to talk about the balance of an arrow. In a previous video we had talked about arrow spine weight and how to make sure that it's correct for your combination. Assuming that it is correct, we're going to get into the balance of an arrow and why that's important. You want the majority of the total weight of this arrow to be within 12 to 15% of its front. Now each arrow is going to be different because each arrow has a different grain weight. Every arrow you find will be stamped with something on the side, usually as far as what the GPI or grain per inch is for that arrow. 8.75, 11.5. Obviously, the higher number, the heavier the arrow, the more kinetic energy it's going to create. But the more that arrow is also going to arc in flight. The lighter the arrow, the flatter the trajectory. Whenever you see a compound bow advertised at XYZ feet per second, those manufacturers are generally shooting the lightest possible arrow to get the fastest possible number. So when they advertise their bow, they can say that it shoots 350 feet per second, whatever the case may be. Now, depending on the grain per weight of your arrow, your combination for your tip may change, either in a field point or in a broadhead situation. When you go to the store, I know you'll notice that there's different weights, 85, 100, 125, whatever it is. You need to find the right one for your combination. You don't just throw anything on there. The way you do that is measuring the arrow's F.O.C. So first of all, we're going to look at the total length of this arrow. It happens to be 32.5 inches. To get that number, we put the tape measure right on the front of the shaft, not including the field point and or broadhead. Please do this with field points, not broadheads. Then you're going to measure all the way to the back to the throat of the nock. The throat of the nock is right where the string sits inside the throat when the arrow is shot. This particular arrow happens to be 32.5 inches long. Then I like to go to Easton's website and type in F.O.C calculator. They have a very handy one. It comes right up. And you're just going to put these measurements into their calculator, 32.5 inches. Next, we're going to find the balance point of this arrow. So all you do, balance it on your hand or your finger. Then when you find out where the arrow is perfectly balanced, you're going to measure from that balance point back to the throat of the nock. This arrow happens to be 19 inches. So we go to Easton's calculator, put it inside there. You're going to see that with those calculations, this arrow has an F.O.C of 8.5%. Definitely not ideal. Usually you want it to be between 12 and 15, closer to 12 for the hunting world, closer to 15 for the target world. Target people are going to be a little bit more known distance shooters, so that's why 15 is more beneficial for them. 12 in hunting is going to give you a little bit more margin of error. So how do we change that number? Well, we're going to take off the head that's on there, and we're going to put a heavier one. In this case, I'm moving from 100 to 125 grain head. Now, we already know the total length of the arrow at 32.5, so now we're going to find our new balance point right on our finger. Once we find that balance point, we're going to, again, mark it with our other thumb or with pen, marker, whatever it is, measure from the balance point back to the throat of the nock. Now, we have a 19 3/4 balance point. So we're going to change that into the F.O.C calculator. That has now changed our F.O.C to 10.8. So you can see how much just a head change is going to change the measurement in the F.O.C of the arrow. Obviously, 10.8 is not where we want to be. We want to be as close to 12 without going under, or 15 without going over. So I would move to 150 grain head and see where that number lies us. And we just kind of keep going from there. So here we have some standard points. This is the Easton version. It's very similar to what comes on almost 90% of the arrows that are out there. It simply slides into the front of the shaft. It would get glued in place with a specific adhesive, and then you would choose the corresponding head that then threads inside of this insert. Whatever weight that you needed 100 grains, 125 grains, what have you, they would screw into there. Now, longer arrows are generally going to require heavier weights because of the length of the arrow when you're dealing with the F.O.C. Usually the industry standard's 100 grain. 90% of the people out there are going to shoot 100 grain field points and broadheads. But for that shooter like me, I have a 31.5 inch draw length. Once I measure out my arrows, I always, depending on the grain of the arrow, I'm generally always with 125 grain field point. Now, grains per inch are going to be stamped on that arrow, or you can look them up online. So that is arrow balance and how it can help you become a more accurate shooter. Thanks for watching. Shoot straight, shoot often.